So here we are, everybody, back for another of my time-lapse build series videos. This is going to be episode 1 in a 3-episode string on the Douglas A-26 Invader. I've got all 3 on the go. If you haven't been following along with the What's on My Desk updates and seen the progress on those, and you'd like to get a bit more in depth of the build, by all means hop over to those. I always have bookmarks in each one for when I talk about each individual model, so you guys can jump back and actually see the progress on this over the months, if that is what you'd like to see. If not, here we are to go through the kit. Now, the first one, if you haven't read the title of the video yet, the one I'll be going through on this video is going to be the ICM A-26K Counter Invader from ICM, and as always, it is in 1/48 scale. Now, before we get too far into this, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. Now, just before I get into this kit, I want to say thank you for everybody who is out there watching this channel. If you haven't yet, and you do like what you're seeing, down below, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want to be notified of when I have new videos coming out. I usually release 4, maybe 5 a month, depending on how busy things are and how much content I have ready to go. If you feel like, or you would like to help contribute a bit more monetarily to help this channel continue, down below in the description, you'll see a link to my coffee account. I always have a coffee on the go. So if you feel so inclined, you can head down there, buy me a coffee, help offset some of the costs that I incur with this channel. But please don't feel like you have to. I'm not begging for money. I'm doing this because I love doing what I'm doing, and I'm taking all of you along for the ride. That being said, let's hop right into this. Let's take a look at this 1/48 scale ICM B/A-26K Counter Invader. So just before we get started with the actual build of this kit, I do want to say I do have the full-blown review of this kit is uploaded. I'll put a link up in the top corner here for how you can access that if you want to see an in-depth look of what comes in this box. I'm not going to do a full kit review right now. I'm just introducing this build, and I will be doing it completely out of the box. I don't plan on using any aftermarket parts at all. There are some inaccuracies in the kit, but I feel like most people aren't actually going to notice it. And my plans right now is to do it up as this aircraft here, Mighty Mouse. That's aircraft 6417651 from the 609th Special Operations Squadron of the 56th Special Operations Wing, based in Nakhon Phanom. I probably completely butchered that. In 1969, and it's Mighty Mouse on the outside of both cowlings, and it's got a Roadrunner on the nose. So that's what I plan on building it up as. Everything else I will be doing straight out of the box. I'm going to be building this with the wheels down and the bomb bay open, and a full load of weapons. That's what I plan. Pretty heavily weathered as well, make it look really used and abused in Southeast Asia. So that's the plan for this kit. So let's just hop right into it, and you guys can watch me actually go through the process of building this kit. So I started this kit just a little bit out of order compared to other ones. The B and the C kit I'm working on, I needed to get the cockpit painted green, and as this K model has a black overall cockpit, the only real parts that need to be painted green were the wheel wells. So I went ahead and got the nacelles and everything assembled ahead of time, so that when I did the green in the interiors for the other two, I could paint the majority of the green parts for this kit at the same time. then once all the nacelles and everything were assembled and painted green, I went ahead and got started on the interior of this kit. And overall, I really like the interior. It looks really, really good. Okay, so here we are, post paint on this A26. Now, interior is black. The instructions still say to do interior green, but every reference I have shows these A26Ks of having a black interior. So I went ahead and painted that up in a black. I didn't do a straight black. I did a bit of a dark gray color. It's just a Vallejo black, thinned with a little bit of lightened with a little bit of white, just to give it a little bit of, basically it's going to allow anything that's true black to pop just a little bit. So if I have to go through and paint some of these panels an actual black, and I do that, you'll see a slight color variation between something that's true black and this overall interior color. As well, when I go ahead and weather, a black wash will actually darken a corner and the dry brush will pop, and you'll still get a variation in the colors. You'll get a deep black, a light black, dark gray, and then the dark gray, I'm going to use probably a neutral gray to dry brush the surface, and you'll get these variation in color, and you'll get a depth, and that'll make everything look a bit better. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and with that weathering as my next step, see how this comes out. A lot of these interior parts as well, so with this darker gray color, a little bit of weathering should make a lot of it pop. I have to say I'm surprised at the lack of detail on some of these parts. I commented on how well this monogram kit holds up, and I mean, you look at the detail and it holds up. I find even there's more detail in, for example, the backside here, where it's inside the wheel, inside the bomb bay. There's more detail in the old monogram kit than there is on the new ICM kit on some of these parts, and it's going to be interesting in the long term to see which one I actually think some of these monogram ones might turn out to be significantly more like detailed in the cockpit and the interior versus the this newer ICM boxing. The one thing I'm still not 100% sure of, well, basically how it's going to look, is this instrument panel. I know there's a decal for the actual panel. I'll have to get that decal out, take a look at it, and see if it's just instruments. I'm going to go ahead and paint part of this panel dark black, flat black, to darken up the panel, and the instruments will go over. If it's a full panel decal, then I'm not going to bother. So I still have to figure out that, but that will come with the next little bit. And then I'm just going to, like I said, go ahead and do a bunch of detail painting on some of this. Go ahead and paint some spots black, aluminum, some areas are going to be red, some details with some of the areas that need to have, you know, some olive drab, like for example on the fire axe here, I'm going to paint part of that olive drab. So I'm just going to go through. I got to do the spot painting, the details, and then give it a good hit of weathering. And then I'll have this at the same stage as those monogram kits, and the next step is going to be assembly. So looking forward to it. So I'm going to stay tuned for that. We'll get through and get some of these parts detail painted, weathered, and we'll see how it all holds up. So here we go. Here, just as we are getting prepared for decaling the instrument panel, I'm gonna go ahead and gloss coat this. It's standard what I do with decals. I'm just gonna, a little bit of Future, a nice soft brush. I'm just gonna give this a solid coat. Actually, I'm gonna move. Future will always change the color slightly, so you don't want a Future part of a piece and not the other parts. Otherwise, even after weathering and flat coat, you'll end up seeing a significant change in color. So it's always best to give the entire part as much of a coat as possible to keep the color even. In this case, I'm not going to worry about the rudder pedals very much because it is sort of a separate part, but the rest of this panel, I'm just going to give it a full coat of gloss and let that dry for about 24 hours. Make sure that Future has cured nice and tight. I'm also going to make sure there isn't any more decal other than that one part. I believe there's only the one decal, but I don't want to assume anything and miss something. Yeah, there's just the one. There's just the one instrument panel decal. So that's all I have to do. That's it. Let that dry, and then we'll come back. We'll get that futured, and then it's going to be weathering this cockpit. And that's right, futured. It's already futured. Put the instrument panel decal on, and then we'll come back, and it's just going to be weathering the interior of this thing, and start getting ready for assembly. I like it. So I commented earlier about how the interior of this, even though it's supposed to be black, I painted it a dark gray. And I showed you when I painted the black detail, how that black detail pops. You can still see where I painted. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So you can see here where I paint something black, it still stands out from the actual background color, but that still looks like a black interior. Now, the other reason I did this, and I think I mentioned it before, And that's to allow the weathering to show. If this was true flat black, it'd be very hard to get shadows. There'd be this monotonous background color and then highlights. And you wouldn't get, because there's always like a color, and then you always get, there's like a color, then you get a darker shade behind it and a lighter shade on the top. If you paint everything flat black, you'll just get the highlights and no lowlights. So this dark gray will allow the lowlights, the shadows, to pop. And before I go ahead and weather this side, I wanted to show everybody out there what I mean. So I've already, as you've seen, weathered the other fuselage. When you put them side by side, you can see, now this has got a shine on it, this one doesn't. This is that black wash dries shiny. So you gotta get a good angle to see it, but you'll see how you can make out shadows. This looks like there's dark corners. This looks like a flat monotonous color. When I dry brush this, you're gonna get a very real depth of color happening. This one, not so much. So this is why you go with this darker gray. I just lightened the black paint a little bit because now you have sort of a generic color. You've got a darker shadow, and then the front surface of that will pop with a highlight. And that is why you gotta get this color variation going on. As well, you'll see the black wash has darkened that color quite a bit compared to this one, which is why you also wanna lighten the colors a little bit. If the color is gonna be a darker color, lighten it up, and then the black wash will tone it down and get it closer to how it should look at the final stage. And you'll see I've also got all of this has been black washed already. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do the black wash on this last half, which I'm basically gonna do now. So it's gonna black wash this last half of this fuselage and then put the instrument panel decal in place. Then I'll do all of my highlights, all of my dry brushing. And then I can go ahead and basically flat coat. I'll be flat coating all three A-26s at the same time because the other two are pretty much ready for the flat coat. So that's my order of operations. Get me through the next couple of days. And yeah, we'll just keep plugging along on this. So here we go, back into a time lapse. Enjoy. Enjoy. So just a bit of an update as I'm working away here. So I'm just going through and gluing all of these interior bits in. There's a lot of holes in this fuselage, a lot of open spaces, and there's not a lot of places to glue together. So it's a little difficult to get everything lined up properly, but I am just slowly going through and doing what I can to make sure everything is as lined up and as straight as possible. Not much left to go on the inside of this. Just about to glue the cockpit on. I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. Console's done. Handles in, rudder pedals, yoke, instrument panel, yoke, seats, and we glue it in. So yeah, I'm just slowly working my way across, gluing in everything bit by bit, and I'm doing it slowly, and I'm literally just doing kind of one at a time, and I'm clamping and taping the fuselage together as much as possible to ensure I have everything lined up properly so that there's no weird angles or anything going on as I assemble this. So it's taking a little bit longer than one would like in some cases to get this done, but I know it's going to be assembled right, and I'm not going to have any issues. So put a bit of glue on here. And then that will go just like that. So now that I get, for example, I have that together. Now I can put the other half of the fuselage on. And then just clamps to ensure everything stays lined up and there's enough force to get that glue to hold together, just like that. But yeah, so there you go. Then I'll just let that dry. I can get a little bit of liquid glue. You want to be careful with liquid glue because it's very easy. For example, if I put any on the back of this instrument panel, I'll glue the two fuselages together, or in this forward section, or back here. It's very easy to accidentally get some glue run, capillary action around the bulkhead and glue the two halves together, which I don't want. So for now, I'm just being very strategic about where I place the liquid glue to ensure that I do get a nice solid joint, but not enough to really cause the two halves to accidentally get stuck together, because that would not be good at this point. Not quite ready to officially glue the fuselage together. I'm getting this weird thing where the pin isn't seating properly. There's the pin in the hole, the alignment pins, and they're not seating properly, and they're leaving a bit of a gap. So I might have to go through with a pin vise and drill out all of those holes a little bit more. So just word of warning, if you are building this kit, before you go and slap this fuselage together with glue, make sure you check that. I don't know if it's just a small number of kits that have this issue, or if it's a wider spread issue. But when you give it a squeeze, there's still a gap where those pins are. Anywhere there isn't a pin, you get a nice clean joint, but everywhere there is a pin, it ends up causing a problem. And I feel like it was something, I feel like I had an issue with this. I can't remember where it was now. There was somewhere else I had the same problem. It was a different kit. Maybe it was the Spitfire kit I had that problem on. Anyway, so just the pins didn't want to line up properly. I think it was the Spitfire kit. I had to shave off a pin in order to get the fuselage to mount tightly together. Also, just be aware before you follow the instructions. I still haven't glued the windows in. So there's all those extra steps I still have to do before this is ready to be glued together. But right now, just trying to get some of these interior parts glued in, trying to get the little baggie as empty as possible, and then we'll move on to kind of the next stages. So that's that. Now we wait. And here, as I get the wings assembled, you can see I end up having to go ahead and paint that area in the wing that's visible through the wheel well. Completely forgot of that before when I started it. So I had to go ahead and get that painted and then weathered up and ready to go so that I could glue the nacelles onto the wings to continue on to the next steps. And you can see here I start gluing the fuselage together, and just like the previous kits, always start, or all kits really, don't glue the entire fuselage in one shot. Always start at one end, make sure your seams are lined up, glue it, work your way down bit by bit slowly to ensure that all your seams are aligned. If you do it all in one shot, there's a high likelihood that you end up getting a misaligned seam somewhere on the kit. So take your time and just do it a little bit at a time. And you can see here, even though it is a relatively newer tool ICM kit, there are still some seams. I don't know if that was my assembly that caused it or if it's legitimately with the kit. I haven't really looked into other builds of this to see, but there are a few seams, especially around that upper kind of top that goes over the bomb bay, as well as the filler for the rear or the lower turret. There's a little panel that blocks that off. Both of those had some pretty decent seams that need to be cleaned up, but it wasn't too bad. And luckily, the panel, the plastic, I should say, sands easily, and it was really easy to blend it all together. And here you can see I start to assemble the nose. A bit of a fiddly construction. There's 5 different pieces that all fit together to make that nose a single piece. And seams really didn't want to line up. It took quite a bit to get it to line up, and even then there was still a bunch of sanding I had to do. So just be careful with that nose. It does take some effort to get everything lined up. And here I start getting the engines assembled as I'll go over here in a little bit. I needed to get these engines. Basically, I had to paint steel for another one of the kits, and while I was doing that, I decided to get as much of this kit painted that needed to be painted steel in one shot. So here I am assembling the engines a little bit earlier than I had initially planned. Okay, so I've just been plugging away on this. I've been doing a lot of prep work on all three A-26s, getting them ready for paint. So specifically with this one, I have painted the engines and whatnot steel. That was kind of the first thing I needed to do, especially not so much for this one, but for the monogram ones. I needed to get because the engines and the cowl flaps are jointly molded. I need to get that painted steel so I can mask that off to paint this back end and get it all ready to go. Anyways, painted everything steel here. I've got the 4 engines. There's 2 per engine plus the 3 landing gear painted up steel, and they still have a little bit of work left to go on them. I'll be doing some weathering and some black wash, and I'll be painting the oleos chrome at some point. Just make them look a little more accurate. And whoops. Oh, come on. Yeah, get that ready to go. This is just the Vallejo metallizer steel, which I'm actually really happy with, to be perfectly honest. So I might even be looking eventually at some of those Alclad colors I use. Some of the ones I don't use for full airframe, some of the detailing ones, the stainless steels, the jet exhaust, and that kind of stuff. I might move to these Vallejo colors. I really like them. They worked out really well, and I'm pretty happy with them. While I've got this out as well, I recently just picked up the Aries B-26K late wheels. And I'll be doing a full review on these pretty soon, actually. You should expect that to come out in a little bit. But the main reason why I needed to get these, and I got them from Sprue Brothers, and there's no affiliation there whatsoever other than I like Sprue Brothers. They have good prices, even with the Canadian conversion and the shipping costs. Usually ends up being a lot cheaper than if I tried to source them locally. But the big thing, look at the difference in the tires. So that, like, I'll zoom in here. Like I said, this is just going to be a quick, let me just get in here. This is just going to be a quick look. I'm not going to go into any crazy detail with this. I'll be doing this with a full-blown review here very shortly. The hubs don't look, well, actually, the hubs do look significantly different. The hubs I'm not too worried about. The brake sides are about the same. The big issue is the tires. Look at the difference in tires. Just look at how different they look in terms of what they should look like versus what they do look like. So that's a huge, huge difference. So that's going to make it very, very different looking when it's on the ground. And just to compare that to what the World War II would look like, you can clearly see the difference in the late model K wheels. They are significantly larger than what you would have seen in World War II. These, I believe, are KC-135 tires that they use. So you can see the rim is different. Everything is different because it's a KC-135 tire. But look at the difference between, I don't even know how much of that you can see. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even in frame here. So you can see the difference between a World War II tire and the late model K tire. Like as I said, these would have been KC-135 tires. So you can see the difference in size from an original World War II tire to what they did on the K. Just because these weren't being able to source by the 1960s. But just like look at the difference between what the kit provides as a tire versus what you actually get tread-wise. Like, this is just my only thought is that these were just blanks that were created, and they were supposed to come back and add detail to these, and they never did in the CAD drawings, and they just forgot about it, because I don't know how you just make a blank tire. Like, there's no, the shape is wrong, there's no tread detail, there's no nothing, they're just blank tires. And so the only thing I could think of is they made up these blank tires, and they had meant to come back and update them at a later time, and then for whatever reason just forgot about it. Because even the nose tire is just blank. There's just no detailing there at all. So anyways, not too sure what ICM was thinking with that. But anyways, these do have a tire. I will need to do a bit of modification and drill the holes in order to get the gear to fit. The hole is obviously too small, so it needs to be drilled out to the proper size, but yeah. It will be a very nice addition to this kit when the time comes. But anyways, as I said, by the time this video comes out, I should have the review up there. So if I remember about it, I will put a link at the top here right now about the fact that I have to put a card so you guys can jump over and see that full review if you so choose. So on that note, I'm going to go back onto it. I think, as I said, I've been working on the monogram kits a little bit, just now kind of working on prep for the fuselage and masking and whatnot. I think my next steps, so the next thing you should see will be the masking of the canopies on this K model. Masking of the canopies and getting this nose glued on and getting the nose weights glued into place. And all that fun stuff. So I'm pretty sure that will be the next step. So yeah. Anyways, keep on building. Just in case it's a little hard to see what I'm doing here, I got the nose weights installed, and they are self-adhesive lead weights, but I went ahead and used a little bit of super glue and baking soda to ensure it had a nice, strong, solid joint, and that those weights don't pop off down the way and all of a sudden, you know, come back and destroy the cockpit or something. And as well, even though it's mostly being done out of frame, and I apologize for that, I am starting the masking process here for this kit. As always, I'm just using the Tamiya tape with a sharp X-Acto blade and a bit of backlight to ensure that I can see the lines and cutting the tape myself instead of using pre-cut. If you're interested more in how that process works, take a look up above. I have a link to my tips and tricks video on how I do the canopy masking. So here we are back for another quick update on this B26 or A-26K, or B-26K, I guess. So here is the current status of this. It's basically ready for paint. It's assembled, primer's down, seams look really, really good, to be honest. There's a little bit around the side piece here, this side in particular. I think I'm going to live with it. It's not horrible, and I think when you get it painted, it's going to give a little bit of battle-tested, kind of battle-worn look. Even back here, there's a bit. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about it. It doesn't look horrible, and it kind of gives it a look like there's been some work done on it, some panels replaced and whatnot. But yeah, it's basically ready for paint. So it's going to be done up basically out of the box in the Vietnam scheme. So black bottom, and then the two-tone, the green, dark green, medium green, and tan across the top, standard Vietnam colors. So that's going to be for the next part. As I've mentioned a few times, I'm splitting this time lapse into two. So this will be the end of part one. And depending on when you're watching this video is when part two is going to come out. It's relatively... if you're watching this pretty close after I release the video, it's going to be a while. It's probably going to be another few weeks, if not months, before I get the second part done on this. If you're watching it, you know, a years, a little while after, you should be able to find it without much problem. If I remember, I'll come back and I'll throw a link into part two if I can remember that, but we'll see how much I remember, you know, in a few months when I get to that. So I'm going to wrap it up here, and part two, you'll take a look at the finishing aspects of this. I said the painting, the camo, the decals, the weathering, and then all the little fiddly bits that I still need to add to it. So stay tuned for part two.
Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.seans-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.